Sacked at times, abandoned by allies at other times, and then roaring back as a saviour to his admirers. A career of ups and downs. But has Boris Johnson finally met his match after he was branded a liar in Parliament? Taking his leave to pursue a life of charitable works. After lying to Parliament 60 years ago, Jack Profumo sought redemption by devoting himself to good works. Humility which paved the way for a return to respectability.
Will you take responsibility for anything?
Not the approach of Boris Johnson, who's castigating those standing in judgment over him.
Hey, it's Nick.
Summer drinks for the Cabinet at number 10.
Good to see you, Nick, as ever.
Is it over for Boris Johnson? Is it over for Boris Johnson?
But keeping their counsel.
Boris Johnson, is it over for him?
Well, what's starting for me is a little reception here, so I'll have to catch you later, Nick.
Catch you later.
Lovely to see you.
And maybe have a view on Boris Johnson later. Alex Chalk, you are the Lord Chancellor.
I am.
You will understand what, deliberately misleading Parliament means. What do you think? Does Boris Johnson have a future? Kemi Badenoch, what do you think about Boris Johnson? Is it over for him?
Honestly, I've been at an away day all day. I haven't read anything or heard any news. What's happened?
He has deliberately misled Parliament and been found in contempt.
Oh, has he?
Yes.
Well, I shall read the reports and see what it says.
There's been a touch of Trump on Thames this week as Boris Johnson has lashed out at those he regards as his tormentors. A political stitch-up that's created a martyr of our times, say some of his allies. Yes, quite Trumpy, as Boris Johnson seeks to reach beyond Parliament to the Tory grassroots as he eyes up an eventual political comeback.
So here is how Boris Johnson might return. Steer clear of Parliament for now. The contempt findings would probably allow Rishi Sunak to block him standing as a Conservative candidate. And anyway, allies say Johnson has a vested interest in seeing the Prime Minister lose the election. Believing that he has a touch of the Churchill about him, Boris Johnson will be hoping for his own Winston is back moment, the party turning to him once again after an election defeat. Friends are not giving up.
Why are we all talking about him? Look, he is such a big political figure. He is, which I must confess annoys some of my colleagues, he is the biggest political figure in British public life. And he attracts people, he connects with people in a way other politicians don't. He is pretty much the only politician in this country who, if he's walking along the street, people stop their cars and get out to shake him by the hand. That is not true, for better or worse, for most of us.
Will the Prime Minister tell the House whether there was a party in Downing Street on the 13th of November?
A question that has echoed ever since. Catherine West says it should be over for Boris Johnson, and consequences too for his allies.
We've seen a pattern now where it would be almost dangerous to allow somebody who doesn't seem to be able to tell the truth allowed back into a position in public life. And I'm very disappointed that the current Prime Minister allowed through his list of cronies last week when actually he knew what the report broadly was going to say. He knew how damning it was going to be, but he couldn't stand up to Boris Johnson and say no.
We've obviously seen indication that Boris and Nigel Farage might finally do the deed and hold hands and run towards the people of England and say, vote for us. You know what, if that's what they want to do, just get on with it. But this Trumpian playbook that they're going through at the moment, where you see some of the Tory backbenchers who are probably going to lose their seats next year wailing at the moon, suggesting there's some grand conspiracy here. Wake up, realise the man's a liar, accept it and move on.
I think it's quite
a pollster does not hold out high hopes of a return.
It's fairly clear that with the public he has a very tainted brand. And, you know, we've seen this, I think, since Partygate, but that's especially true recently. So, for example, we did a poll last week, and it was polling global figures, but including some Brits, and it found that, you know, he was more unpopular than Xi Jinping and also Philip Schofield, despite everything. So 62% of the British public had a negative view of Boris Johnson. So that's incredibly bad.
The view from afar, biding his time in the shadows for now, as Boris Johnson ponders his future.